going to talk about Deadpool.
Today is Deadpool.
Not just Deadpool.
Deadpool and Wolverine.
And Wolverine, bud.
Yeah.
That's right.
Go see Deadpool and Wolverine. It's a good time.
Or don't, and just keep it in your backlog like Oppenheimer and Barbie is mine. Would you recommend this movie to someone? Maybe they're just riding the hype train.
Let's say for that audience, for people who are following like the main events of like the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Welcome to the Juice Box Office Podcast. We're going to take some tabs on the latest juice in cinema. I'm Michael.
And I'm Duncan.
And today we are coming at you with Season 2.
Season 2.
Episode 1. We're back. We're here in the same room together.
Same room together.
It's brilliant. There's been a lot that has happened since, May 2022, I think.
May 2022. We last saw No.
We didn't see Deadpool.
We didn't see Deadpool.
No.
We saw Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
Yes. Well, that was great because people would know, if you're looking through the episode list, is that right now the only one that's been released is Multiverse Part 1, which is Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yes.
That's where the canon ended.
Yes.
Because we have a secret episode where we were going to do a Part 2. But honestly, Multiverse of Madness, I think, it's still there. It's still out there in the archive. Mm-hmm. It is tucked away, but for whatever reason, it just didn't see the light of day. I think that, honestly, to me, I think that my thoughts of what was happening in that movie kind of changed pretty quickly. I was pretty rosy-eyed and, really liking it as a sequel to the original Doctor Strange, but for whatever reason, it didn't ever never released. So that's there to hang over everybody's head. That if you ever want to see Multiverse Part 2, make a big deal about it, I guess.
We'll dig it up.
We'll dig it up. We can dig it out there. I know where it is. I know where it lives.
Okay.
But no, today
on you.
Today we are going to talk about Deadpool.
Today is Deadpool.
Not just Deadpool.
Deadpool and Wolverine.
And Wolverine, bub.
Yeah.
That's right. So you gotta show it.
Hey, bub.
Yeah. Hey, bub.
I hope that's focusing.
Yeah. Well, if it doesn't, then it's whatever.
We'll
fix it in
find a shot
post.
for it.
Yeah, we'll fix it in post. We'll get like a PNG in there.
Mm-hmm.
So the way, since it's been a while, just kind of go over the Juice Box Office is basically whatever me, Michael, and co-host Duncan, whatever we want to see in the cinema, which is the fancy name for the movie theater, we will go and see it together. Just as a general, we want to see movies together. It's a lot of fun. And then we're going to talk about it. So a lot of it has been like the Marveler movies. Mm-hmm. Haven't seen Marvel movies in a while together. I mean, it pretty much was Multiverse of Madness.
I think so. Yeah,
I don't
2
think
years ago.
I don't think we've done anything like that. So, they keep making those things. You see one, you see them all.
Pretty much.
But we also do other movies like we saw Uncharted. There's some video gamey ones that I probably coaxed Duncan into seeing too. And then Duncan will see the artsier movies that are actually good, like Everything Everywhere All at Once, and he'll coax me into seeing. So it balances itself out. It's more or less kind of what's currently there. We're kind of hitting at an interesting time. I think the summer box office kind of just exploded suddenly. There was pretty much nothing. And then Disney, has been coming off with Inside Out 2. I actually saw that one.
Did you?
Yeah, I did.
I was curious about it.
I'd recommend it. It's like Pixar's best-selling movie ever. So
really?
It's top grossing.
Dang.
It actually beat out the previous. Now, I played this game with some of my friends. I'll just play with you right now.
Like guessing what the previous one
What was the previous top grossing movie from Pixar?
Personally, I always want to say it's The Incredibles because that's what it is for me. But before, maybe it was Toy Story?
No, it wasn't. You were actually very close when you said The Incredibles, because it's actually The Incredibles 2.
It was the second one?
That was The Incredibles 2 previously was its top grossing movie before Inside Out 2 obviously took its place.
Wow.
And like Finding Dory's up there. Some of those Toy Story 4, Toy Story 3 are all up there. The original Toy Story, I just don't think that as many people would go to see them at that point.
Yeah, it gets buried a little bit.
I think that one also had a good, like, post, whatever you call, like, DVD, VHS sales, and all that stuff.
Yeah, DVD release.
So... but basically that sort of thing. And another thing that we also like to do is we will have a Pulp-Free version of the review, which has no spoilers in it. And then we will have an in-depth With-Pulp review where we kind of go in. I know that sometimes you listen to like a review podcast and you're like, I don't really think I'm actually going to see it. And you just want to listen to our thoughts. Feel free. But if you do want to see it, we'll make it quite clear when the spoiler is going to come. Or when Pulp's going to come, and then go from there. So, why don't you kind of go ahead and just kick things off with a Pulp-Free kind of generic overview? What's happening with this here film?
Yeah, so Deadpool and Wolverine was released on July 26th, 2024. It was directed by Sean Levy, who you might know for his work on Night at the Museum, Free Guy, and especially Stranger Things. Features Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, and Emma Corrin as Cassandra Nova, who is the, long-lost twin sister of Charles Xavier.
Yep.
X-Men.
That's right. So we're going to go on a little bit more in depth into the kind of surrounding vibes around it a little bit later on, but... basically, the way that this movie starts out is that Deadpool's homeworld is kind of in trouble. There's a big ad where he gets visited by the TVA, and basically, that's never a good sign, especially if you're a not main branch MCU film franchise. And they make that pretty abundantly clear of like where it's at in terms of that. There's a lot of references to the fact that historically, this is a Fox movie. Now I believe it's a Marvel Studios Disney production.
Yep.
I don't think they do use a secondary studio, like 21, like cans or something like that. I probably butchered that, but which is kind of where the talent of Sean Levy comes from and a lot of, the other people. Okay. But was there a lot of hype, would you say, building up to this?
I would say there was a lot of hype just because, and maybe it wasn't until they started releasing media about the movie, because we found out that there were like clips and things about, I think Hugh Jackman's whole story was that he had just finished either like Logan 2017 released, or he just finished, just wrapped filming on it. Mm-hmm. And it was like right after that I think Ryan Reynolds kind of... threw out this idea.
Yep.
Although I think back since I think Wolverine Origins in 2009,
mm-hmm.
I think I have the year right on that.
Yep.
Was when they even showed clips like at the end of the movie of like Ryan Reynolds talking about always like loving the Deadpool comics and wanting to bring that character to life. So I think really the idea of Deadpool and Wolverine has been there since the beginning,
mm-hmm.
and they've certainly set it up well. And I think they hit the hype and the anticipation on the nose.
I agree. I think that, especially like you can say all you want, and we'll probably talk about a little bit of the multiverse stuff. Mm-hmm. It's pretty easy to take pot shots at it now. Maybe it was a gimmick at one point, but now a lot of people would refer to it as almost, it's not like a problem, but it's like a boom or bust. Like it's either really good, but kind of all the stars have to align. Yeah. And you're right. I mean, I didn't realize that the last Deadpool movie was in 2018.
It's been a while.
That's a long, at least I feel like that's a long time.
It is, especially because there were only 2 years between the first Deadpool and the second one.
Right.
2016 was the first one.
I think so. That sounds right.
And then we got the second one in 2018, which was like right after Infinity War, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe it was right after
Infinity War. Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, I would agree. I think that hype was pretty big on this one, mainly because Kevin Feige also is doing the things that you do as a producer when you're promoting it, and you're going to say that it's like an important thing. Yeah. He kind of tweeted, I think famously, that like of all the Marvel movies, Avengers Infinity War was like a 9 out of 10 in terms of importance. Endgame was obviously that 10 out of 10 moment that kind of redefined the whole universe that all these heroes are living in. Mm-hmm. And then he claimed that Deadpool and Wolverine was an 8 out of 10 on that scale.
And that makes sense to me, because my whole impression of what this movie was supposed to be was that, okay, we finally know, like, you know, in what like the fourth wall is for the movie, but like in our reality, we know that like they're kind of trying to tie up any loose threads with Fox produced stuff and, you know, move it all over to Marvel. So I think this was definitely, I expected this movie to serve that purpose at the very least.
Yeah. So we can get a little bit more into if the hype was fulfilled, probably either in our Pulp review or not. I would say overall, would you recommend this movie to someone maybe who's seeing, like, maybe they're just riding the hype train. They're not going to see like the Marvels or maybe even Ant-Man, but they're going to like be seeing the Spider-Mans and they're going to see the Avengers. Would you say that someone like that would be good to watch Deadpool Wolverine?
Yeah, I would say for that audience, for people who are following like the main events of like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I would say a big recommendation, yes, to go see it. Probably still a yes recommendation overall, just to general audiences. I think it's a really good time. I thought it was fun to watch. A lot of good action and story points to follow along with, but probably not something entirely for everyone, but
yeah, I think that it's really interesting because I think that there's like almost two different kinds of, you almost like mentioned it yourself, there's almost like two different kinds of people. There are people that just like superheroes in general. Mm-hmm. Like they like Batman and they might go see the new Batman and they might also like be like, oh, well, you know, the Justice League, I sure do love the Justice League, until they heard it was a crap movie and then they wouldn't do it. And then, you know, there's people where it's almost like it's a pop culture icon, or these like superhero movies. It's just what's popular, or at least they were popular, depending on who you ask. In like the 2010s, I would say is probably its heyday. And ever since we pretty much hit the 2020s and COVID, they become a lot more under scrutiny. I would say that I also would highly recommend it, especially even if you think you're mildly interested in either, you know, if you're interested in the X-Men, like you like the X-Men movies, I think this is a great, and it really is almost like an homage. Even if you look in the credits scene, like they were showing a lot of like really cool things, and it kind of hit me at that point, like, oh man, like this really kind of feels like the end of an era of sorts, you know? So it's a giant love letter. As you can see in the trailer, Wolverine actually wore his classic comic yellow and blue suit, which Fox Wolverine, like, it just never happened. Yeah. So I think that for that reason, I can definitely recommend it to someone like that. There are some issues, I think. We might tackle that in the Pulp section, but overall, I don't think, you know, especially if you're excited to go see it, I'd recommend we see it.
Absolutely. So. What did the critics and the audience scores say?
Well, I do know that Deadpool and Wolverine has the luxury where every entry in the Deadpool series is now certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. I had seen a lot of critics wavering towards like the 7 or 8 range. And I think that, you know, hype is a very powerful thing, and I don't know, like, overhyped may be a very, like, strong word. I do think that you kind of expect things to happen that, you know, have it's always like this weird effect whenever you bring in the multiverse and it's something that is really weak. It's like, oh, well, what's going to happen when they're brought into the other world? Like, there's an interaction, with some MCU characters pretty even early on in the movie where, you're wondering where it can go, but overall it kind of gets pushed to the side for like the main plot. Obviously they had the TVA stuff, so if you're a fan of the Loki show, there's a whole lot of questions that people have there because it's pretty open-ended. I mean, it's season 2 was really good and like kind of tying things up, but also in a way it kind of makes you go like, well, what's going to happen, you know? Yeah. So you're kind of almost, maybe I was expecting that, like
to get more of an answer from
maybe like some more TVA stuff. Like they do also go a little bit deeper into like establishing, like you could tell it's going to be a pretty big deal in Avengers 5 probably when it comes out. Yeah. Which is, I think Marvel was trying to plan the extra big moments for those. Yeah. Even when we were talking about the Lost episode, Multiverse of Madness, that was like a thing where people were expecting like these sorts of this big event to happen. That's right. It just kind of never happened. Yeah. Or it happened, but it was kind of like a set piece, and then eventually you're like, okay, well, let's go back to the actual plot of the main character. Yeah. So I think that maybe it's just me. Maybe it's a lot of people that would be watching an MCU movie if they're like, oh, well, this big thing, like someone's gonna die in the movie, like it feels weird to even like think that's gonna happen now, because every time it's almost like, all right, even when we get to the pulp section we'll probably talk about the implications of some of the things that are still like sort of just up in the air and they kind of toe the line. So I would probably imagine that that's why the critic score is lower than the audience. The audience loves this. It's like 97%.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
So pretty great stuff there.
Yeah, so I was probably closer to the audience score because I did like a 4.5 out of 5 or a 9 out of 10. So I overall really enjoyed it. I thought a lot of it was well done, from the not only like the writing, the plot, the cinematography. I also look at like some of the special effects, and I guess I try to look at like props and costume design, but that's so few and far between with so much CGI now. But between all that, I thought it was pretty good. Just a few things that I'd nitpick, and that's I when I do my ratings, I'm like, okay, was it really good that I want to give it perfect, or are there things that it could still do better? And okay, let's not give it a perfect at that point. So.
Yeah, I'm a little lower. I'm at an 8 out of 10. I guess 4 out of 5. Yep. I knew that it was good. I had a good time overall, but I did leave and I was like, I could smell some issues. Maybe it might be a little bit more of like a 7. The humor was on point, and again, you just kind of at the end, like I was feeling like generally like satisfied. Mm-hmm. At this rate, like Deadpool's a great guy. It's an R-rated movie, so there are sometimes where I think it takes advantage of that, and other times it's a little bit just extra. But honestly, I think that there's a lot of clever shots. There's a lot of clever things that we're going to get into pretty soon. Do you have any... what's the moral of Deadpool and Wolverine, Duncan?
I found some, and I think I can say something about it without giving away too much. But I think it's about... just very lightly like themes of sort of self-redemption and also some like self-forgiveness. I think that's mostly what it points toward is redemption, and maybe a little bit of like believing in yourself too.
Yeah, I think that it's probably not surprising for a Deadpool movie to do that because I think almost all of them are something like that, or like having a greater purpose. I think that that's what Deadpool is at least chasing. I don't think it's really a spoiler.
No, I think he's always been
doing that. He's like always, obviously you see him and he feels like he's a self-centered kind of person. And even at the beginning of this movie, like there's some like cues that kind of almost reestablish that he hasn't quite changed all the way. Like there's a little part of him still that is kind of like a goofball. But then, as you might expect in any movie, like the climax, things get a little bit more dramatic, and There are parallels of both characters, which I think is very clever to do, and the fact that it's kind of weaved in so naturally, I think is pretty hard to do. So I think it's a good testament of it. It's the popcorn buckets, Duncan.
Oh, yeah, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
Are they only doing those at AMC?
I think AMC. Yeah. I did see someone at our theater. We went to a Regal theater. Yeah. I saw someone with a little cup, and the cup had a Wolverine in a movie chair sitting on it. That's what Regal got. Regal got the Wolverine on top of your cup. And then they got like this nice, like, it was actually like a nice souvenir metallic, like souvenir popcorn tin. It's really funny that movie theaters make a lot of, they make a lot of money, I think, on souvenir tins. They realize, oh crap, there's a lot of ways we can spin this off. Because people spend like $40 or even $60 on probably the Wolverine popcorn tin with his mouth open and stuff like that.
God. Well, you already have people in line like buying food and stuff, so it's not that difficult of an upcharge to just like add on the souvenir thing. And then if you have collectors, like they definitely want.
Exactly. Collectors of the Xbox controller, right? That's what it is?
Yeah, so I guess that one's weird because I couldn't remember if there was if they were also doing a special edition console. I feel like I might have seen a glance over that at some point.
It could be, yeah.
But yeah, the main thing was like, we have the Deadpool controller, and then they also made a Wolverine one. But I also remember being kind of disappointed when people revealed that it's just like a magnetic attachment.
Yeah, just like a little.
I might 3D print one. Just
okay.
Yeah. But I bet I could look it up right now. I'm sure someone's already like shared a free file of like the butt attachment for your Xbox controller.
Oh, I'm sure. With something that's like that, I mean, whew.
Yeah.
So in terms of competition with other movies, we already mentioned Inside Out 2. That one's been out for a while.
Yeah.
Despicable Me 4 also is also making waves. Like it was also very successful. Huh. And then Twisters.
Oh yeah, Twisters.
So Twisters is kind of, I think, evoking the Top Gun Maverick like energy, where it's like a very safe and we know it sequel, but we don't care because there's dudes and the Twisters and they're combining and all that stuff.
There's 2 of them now.
There's 2 now. So anyway, where would you put Deadpool and Wolverine when it's stacked up against those? I think that generally speaking, you're going to see an MCU movie or you're not. Like you're either into him or you're not into him. So that sort of competition's there. I don't really know of what superhero competition would be,
I don't think there's much else out there right now. Like earlier I was thinking about how maybe part of the reason why I enjoyed the movie so much and just like the viewing experience so much is I'm pretty sure the last movie I saw was The Marvels back in November. So like 8 months ago. So it's been a while since I've seen a Marvel movie, and it's been a while since I've seen one in the theater. So I think it's just they haven't really released much. They're getting ready to start this whole new phase. So it's just been a bit.
Yeah, there hasn't been a DCEU movie that's come out since 2023 because they had Aquaman. And The Lost Kingdom was the last one.
And then I barely saw anything about that.
There was like no marketing there. I think they were really putting all their money on The Flash and Blue Beetle, but mainly The Flash.
Oh, and Blue Beetle, like, did that even happen?
Yeah, it did.
It came out?
It came out.
I always saw the trailers.
Probably like straight to Max, and then before that it was Shazam. Shazam 2 was apparently actually decent. I don't know. Might have to fact check that one. So, yeah, I'd say that in terms of its competitors, I don't know, man. If you have kids, Inside Out 2 is probably where I go. And if you don't have kids, then just Deadpool Wolverine, it's pretty good, as we know. Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of funny. I feel like it's almost like Disney's running the whole movie theater business now.
Pretty much.
Like, everyone has to plan their things around whatever they release. It's like Inside Out 2 comes out, and then it's like, well, Despicable Me 4 comes out like 3 months later. So, like, it's another thing for them to do. Other than that, I think we're ready to go into our intermission.
Boop.
We'll see you on the flip side.
Flip side. Okay, welcome back. We are now going to jump into the With-Pulp section. So if you're planning to see the movie or you just don't want any spoilers yet, you better stop here. Go see Deadpool and Wolverine. It's a good time.
Or don't, and just keep it in your backlog like Oppenheimer and Barbie is mine.
Oh, is it still?
I did not ever see Barbenheimer. I Barbenheimered.
Finally did.
Did you watch both of them back to back?
I can't remember the time. I remember Barbie I saw like mid-January, I think, and then I saw Oppenheimer later. So I don't know if that's the right order.
Yeah.
They definitely weren't back to back. I enjoyed both of them very much.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I would probably like both of them. One of them my wife wants to also see, so I can't jump out, and now I have to schedule a special night to watch it. I think it's on Hulu, so that's good. We live in the age of streaming.
Love it.
Now that Redbox is going down under.
I'm surprised it's still around, honestly.
Well, not so much anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know. My friends always joke around. They always say that I'm like the one that's single-handedly like keeping things that other people disregard like open. Like I pay for YouTube Premium. I go on YouTube Music. I'm a YouTube Music fan, and people always write that off like, what is that? Why don't you listen to Spotify, bro?
I was holding up Redbox for a while there. Like it was kind of a routine. It was like we're going by like CVS or whatever.
Yeah. Pick up a little movie while you're there. That's how I watched The Suicide Squad. Not The Suicide Squad. Suicide Squad.
The first
one. Okay. So, now you can just go to Walmart and get it at the $5 bin or whatever.
True.
So we're going to get into Pulp section.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. So, start of the movie. I think that Deadpool's kind of known for having weird openings where it's in media res, as they call it, where it's in the middle of something that is happening. Like the first scene is he jumps down from the interchange and he goes to, presumably shoot up Francis. That was the first movie.
I'm having trouble picturing it. I remember the one.
He's like, well, it's like the slow-mo scene. The intro credits is all the bullet
he's
action.
On the overpass or whatever.
Yeah, he's on the overpass drawing on the crayon.
That's right. And the thing I love about that, like I'll say real quick, is and why this whole Deadpool and Wolverine thing was always coming is that like he said
always references.
He referenced Wolverine and Hugh Jackman like in that first scene.
Yeah.
In that first Deadpool movie. But anyway, there wasn't any like particular theme to the first Deadpool movie opening. The second one they did the whole James Bond opening credits, which I loved. This one I don't know if there's like they're really like calling to another movie or a different like opening style, but they did. Was it the Backstreet Boys?
Yeah, the Backstreet Boys. There was some times where it just clearly just devolved into like a dance sequence of the Backstreet Boys. So
it was good.
This movie references Logan a lot, and even the second movie referenced Logan because Deadpool was angry in the second movie that Wolverine died, and that he was like, "How am I going to top like something so dramatic?" And everyone was praising it for being a great film because of that self-sacrifice scene. So, I guess Deadpool, again, it's like in the middle of things. So they start in this fight sequence where basically he digs up the Wolverine from his universe. And he's trying to I don't really know what he's trying to do exactly.
Well, he thought he was alive at first.
Oh, that's right. He said that he didn't actually die.
Yeah, he's like, he's not dead. But then he just finds a skeleton, throws a fit, ends up chilling with the adamantium skeleton for a bit, which I don't know was like. I found that as kind of a validating to just like the cinematic universe and also just like the comic universe. Like we always knew he had an adamantium skeleton, but I feel like they easily could have, if they were really lazy with this, they could have brushed it off and like.
I think that's like
really shown it.
That's a detail where you can be like, oh wow, like Wolverine does have an adamantium skeleton. Like that's what I thought when I first said it. And so like, oh, that's really clever because then like the TVA come and they're like, you're coming with us, punk, and he starts basically using the skeleton to completely murder all of them in a pretty good intro sequence. But then it flashes back. He's like, why am I doing this? So at the end of Deadpool 2, he basically has Cable's fixed time machine.
Yes.
So they did a bunch of jokes where he was like going back. He like shot Ryan Reynolds, who was trying to like audition for Green Lantern or something like that, and all sorts of other like sort of almost like mini cameo scenes. But one of the things that he did was that he visited Earth 616, which is known as the Sacred Timeline.
Did he do that?
That's what happened, right? So basically he said like, I'm gonna like find my purpose. So he talks to Happy Hogan, who is like the doorman of the Avengers at that point, head of security.
Yeah. And
he is pleading to join the Avengers, and Happy doesn't really like care at all.
Was he in Earth 616 at that point though, or was that
Earth? Still the alternate Earth? That was 10, the alternate. Whatever.
It was 10005.
Okay, 10,005. All right. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll probably just call it the other.
Yeah.
The Fox Earth, whatever.
Yep.
So yeah, basically that was one of the things that he did. Because I was a little bit confused as to how that happened, because it did almost seem like he just visited New York and that Happy was there and that they were already in the other Earth. But then the idea is that eventually Deadpool visits the TVA. The TVA offers him a place in the sacred timeline because he's special, right? Yeah. But the con is basically that his current timeline that he was living in lost their anchor point. And so that timeline was going to go away because somebody ceased to exist in the timeline and it was basically going off to space or whatever.
Yep.
And that person
was Logan.
Yep. Right? So it kind of is pretty neat and also pretty funny that in the Deadpool movie that Logan is kind of the main character, and that the entire universe that was the Deadpool trilogy, again, Logan and Deadpool are in the same universe, also the New Mutants, which nobody watched. But
it's so far gone. I mean,
2020 was one hell of a time.
Yeah.
But no. Wolverine in that universe was the central person, and they basically said, look, you can either fizzle out with this universe or you can join like the sacred timeline. So
now I want to stop there for a second, because something that was left unclear for me was, what was this whole greater purpose that they were trying to sell to Deadpool? Like they were going to go ahead, like Paradox was the character who was kind of running his own like rogue operation within the TVA, and I think they called it the Time Ripper is what they were going to use to be efficient about just wiping out, clipping the loose ends or on these branch timelines, which is what the TVA used to do. But they did this was like the only thing they did that really tied up or maybe continued some of Loki season 2, which was to say that, the TVA operates differently now. Because I think Sylvie ends up running it at the end of season 2.
I'm not sure.
I don't remember. I just know it still exists at the end. And they run it differently. So this was kind of a cool way to see, like, they're still kind of keeping an eye on different timelines, but they're allowing several timelines.
I think the whole thing is like they're gonna let it run its course. Like one time they're gonna let things die naturally, which previously deviant universes, if they stray too far away from the sacred timeline or whatever, they would get pruned, which literally meant like bombing, killing, whatever. There are people even in the Loki season 2 show that were opposed to, like, they like the old way. They don't think that mainly because, and also from Loki, I guess spoilers for Loki season 2 if you wanted to see that. But basically, the new people running the TVA, and unfortunately I like forget all the main, whoever's doing it, Sylvie or whoever. They're just going to let things run their course, and according to Paradox, that was like 1 to 2,000 years. Like, it's going to be a long time. And he's basically like, that's crazy. Like, there's, a lot of danger in this happening, which back in, season 2 Loki, you'd realize that the whole like main conflict of that, the impending doom, was basically all these timelines are out of control due to what Loki did in season 1.
Yep.
And so their little machine like that would streamline everything together basically broke, and they basically had to fix it. And so that's what the end of Loki season 2 is all about. And I kind of appreciate, that they are giving some development to the TVA. They're,
because it could have died with Kang.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that.
It probably would have if, like, Loki gave birth to it, but whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I forgot that this is almost like a little bit of a scrub. Mm-hmm. Like just another little thing where they're not making things Kang-centric. Because, I don't think they were going to be fighting Kang or anything like that, but...
I don't think they will be anymore.
I don't think they're going to be fighting Kang in Avengers 5 either. They might just forget the whole thing was happening, or maybe Ant-Man will... I don't know. Maybe somebody... I know that Galactus is someone that
slated for it.
There's been, like... Fantastic Four movie that's going to come out in the next phase.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be in like Avengers 5, but maybe down the line.
I think Fantastic Four actually comes after the next 2 big Avengers releases.
Yeah, I think so.
Scene.
Yeah.
The last thing I saw about like a big bad was actually a different version of... I don't know if it's supposed to be a different version of Tony Stark who becomes Doctor Doom, but it's like it is Robert Downey Jr. re-entering the MCU as Doctor Doom.
There you go.
I don't know if they do that, but it's possible. I don't know if the comics ever had anything about Tony Stark becoming Doctor Doom, but like
that beats me.
Anything's possible.
Yeah, honestly, the MCU is obviously like kind of its own thing now. So, just gonna circle back, right? So, kidnapped during his birthday, the anchor being thing, that was like the main. That was the main thing, I think. Mm-hmm. That when Kevin Feige says it's an 8 out of 10 importance, it's like that is being established as what's happening. Is like if you have this like strong figure in a timeline, then if it's there, it's there, and if it's not there, then it's gonna go kapooey.
And that was kind of a new element, because what they had established before was that there are the Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse movies created the canon events. Which is like, this thing has to happen, otherwise this reality crumbles. Yeah. What do they call it in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness? It was something point, I think, right? Like
yeah. Gosh, man, what a great movie.
I think it was the same thing though. It was like, yeah, so memorable. I mean, I liked it, but
No, I mean, I still like it. I'm trying to take a look, but
because like Doctor Strange, like the whole thing for Doctor Strange was that I think there wasn't a universe where things worked out with Christine. Mm-hmm. So it's like it's kind of the same thing. It's sort of like a canon event, but instead of like a singular event, it's just this is the way things are for you in all reality.
Yep.
So yeah, that new element was cool. It's still not clear to me what they were trying to sell to Deadpool as like, hey, come be like Marvel Jesus. Like, what was he? I guess like because I see the part where it's like, okay, we can trick Deadpool into doing something for us because we know he's looking for this greater purpose, but I'm not understanding right now is like, why didn't they just let his universe crumble as is?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think the whole Marvel Jesus thing is interesting because it almost, again, that like sort of self-centered like sort of thing where it's like, like here, these are all my friends and these are the people that I care about. Mm-hmm. I think the main thing, because in the end he basically defies Paradox in the first scene and they get zapped with the fun stick and they go to the void. Maybe it was the idea that he knew that he would be able to kind of fix things because he just knew the simple existence of the TVA was going to, he could persuade someone maybe, or he could he was, I think his idea was that if he agreed to go help Paradox, then actually I don't think he ever was going to agree to help Paradox because in the end, he did what he did and he got zapped. Yeah. So maybe it was just fourth wall break. I don't know. It's a little confusing. I agree with that.
It's confusing, and that's where I would take off some points, because it's like, and maybe I just missed something. Maybe if I go back and watch it again, it would be more clear. But the only thing that would kind of answer it is if things worked based off of the previous TVA's operations, where it's like, because it would have made so much sense for, okay, end of Deadpool 2, Deadpool plays around with time and messes up all this stuff. Oh, TVA sees that this variant is a deviant, I guess, or no, that's Eternals, isn't it? This variant is deviating from the timeline,
right?
And so yeah, we're gonna prune his timeline. That makes sense. But if the new TVA is operating in a certain way, then why would they even go after Deadpool at all? Why not let him do his thing? They even said they were going to let him just be with his universe and let it die out in 2,000 years anyway.
Yeah, I think that, I guess the whole, it's kind of like main character syndrome, that like he's special and that he was identified as someone that, you know, is promising. It could be that he's just really good at being Deadpool, and like maybe he's honestly I have no idea. I think the general idea was that the sacred timeline is Earth 616. Yes. The only other reference to Earth 616 is the happy scene.
Yeah.
So my main thing there is that he was just trying to be selfish, and that he was like, oh, well, I can get into this universe and like fit in properly with the TVA rather than with, you know, replacing whatever Deadpool. I mean, it seems like Deadpool doesn't exist in Earth 616.
I don't think so.
So maybe it was just the fact that he was going to be able to exist in that universe, and you know, like that his friends were going to explode. But obviously, I think that he only learned that his friends were going to explode as like a caveat after he already like agreed and liked that he was potentially going to go to another place. But I agree. Yeah, it's definitely like.
I'm just remembering the whole suit up scene.
Yeah, the suit up scene was a really good one. I agree with that. For sure. So anyway, it gets pruned. Yep. They go into the void. That's what it's called. It's the area in Loki, basically, where you go when you get pruned. It's kind of like a dumpster fire of a bunch of usually deviants of whoever, right?
Just anyone who did the wrong thing against the sacred timeline. It
is interesting that they identified that more characters go there than others, because they said like they have 1,000 Deadpools,
right?
But there's not a whole lot of like Wolverines, and you know that even like they said Charles Xavier, there's not a whole lot of Charles Xaviers. They come every now and again or whatever. But I think the main thing, first they fight the Deadpool. Oh no, we forgot to go through the adventure, right?
Yeah, so Deadpool thought that, oh, well, my universe is missing a Wolverine. Why don't I just grab one from another universe? So that was a really cool.
It was kind of funny.
It was funny. I forget what it's. A montage of. Just looking for each different version of Wolverine, and that was cool to see. Especially, I loved I think my favorite was when they show Wolverine in like the yellow and reddish suit, I think, and he's like, "Oh, this is the one where he fights Hulk," and then Deadpool gets that was pretty sweet. I liked that.
Yeah,
anything that just brings like some of those, and I don't know the comics very well, but like. The epic battles that I've heard about from the comics.
Yeah, like you hear it in the afterwards, and like there's famous scenes, like they had the one with the X with Wolverine, which is a really popular cover.
That one I didn't know about.
That one was a really, I think, almost like viral cover of a comic where it was like, you know, he feels really guilty about stuff. But anyway, there's a whole montage, and eventually he found really short Wolverine, which is really funny. And then finally he goes to a special Wolverine. A lot of people at the start referred to him as the worst Wolverine.
He's the only one who didn't try to kill him right away. He was too drunk.
Yeah. And we'll just kind of go through the backstory, but they reveal throughout the movie that this Wolverine, he just looks like drunk at the start. So he seems like he's not able to like, he isn't as aggressive towards Deadpool, so he's actually able to go with him back to the TVA.
Yep.
As Deadpool's like, look, I'm like, fix my universe now. Here's another Logan, right? You know, he's So he brings them, back to the TVA.
Yep.
The Wolverine is just generally like a big, like nihilist, whatever you say.
Yep.
He's very much like, I've doomed everyone. Like, I'm a complete, utter disgrace. But Deadpool promises him that this TVA thing, they're able to fix, his home world and basically like clear up the mistakes that this Wolverine made. Mm-hmm. And so that is the Wolverine that Hugh Jackman is playing. It's in a universe where Wolverine basically ran away as all the mutants were, basically dying. All the plants and the takeover and all that stuff. The details are a little bit obviously vague. There's like,
they just say humans showed up.
Humans showed up.
Anything similar to or identical to like what we've seen in some of the Fox X-Men movies, which is like, okay, humans just storm the
house,
school for gifted youngsters, or the main enemies in like all of X-Men history has always been the Sentinels.
Yep.
And we actually see what I believe is supposed to be a Sentinel leg used as a rocket.
That's right.
Wolverine and Deadpool.
I was wondering what that was.
I'm pretty sure it's a Sentinel.
I think, I was thinking was that or a Doctor Doom leg, but I think the Sentinel leg probably makes more sense.
Yeah.
So, they're pruned, basically, as, like, basically Paradox says, no, that plan isn't going to work. You can't just bring a Wolverine and plop him down in your universe to, like, save it and, like, stabilize it, because he's not the right one. This is the worst one. He can't, like, hold things together. Like, he can't serve the same role, I guess, as Logan from Earth 10,005, whatever it is. And so, they basically say, what do you mean? And then they are lashing out. And they get pruned, and they get sent to the void. But we finally made it to the void.
And the void is the fun part, because it's where anyone from anywhere can end up, and that means you get to do all the fun cameos.
That's right.
The first one that we get is, I love how they set it up.
This is such
a really creative way to set it up.
It's a great setup.
They show this like mysterious hooded figure. I really had no guesses as to who it was at first, but I know in retrospect, it's like, oh, they're like, this is a very clean character that they're bringing into a Deadpool movie. So they're kind of giving all these hints that, oh, this is Captain America. Yeah. And he turns around and it is Chris Evans. And for a while, they still let you believe that it is Captain America.
He's wearing like a blue long sleeves with like a red wrap around his shoulder. And I think he had almost the same cloak as in Infinity War when he was like hiding out doing that.
But then once Cassandra Nova's whole team shows up, and we get a bunch of other early 2000s X-Men sprinkled in there, like Sabretooth and Pyro, Toad. Yeah. But yeah, once he's like ready to fight, he says "Flame on," and we realize it's Human Torch, which like
that is so funny.
Totally, like I think if you were thinking about what to expect, you could have seen coming. But I was like, that's so. I mean, I saw the Fantastic Four movies a lot. I liked them in that era. That was like 2004, 2005 ish. Yep. But it was I never expected to see that again. So I thought that was hilarious, but also cool.
Oh yeah, no. I think that you're there again. You got Kevin Feige. There's like something. It's hyped up. It's like TVA, and you're thinking like your brain is just primed to think like Chris Evans. Oh, there's gonna be like a shield that comes out of somewhere, and then he's gonna grab it. But then you have to remember that where you're at, and Chris Evans played the Human Torch. Mm-hmm. So
and I think it's interesting because you're almost. I'm kind of seeing some really good strategy here, which is that they kind of get your attention on the MCU and set your expectations on the MCU. So it's like, oh, we went to see Happy to join the Avengers. Like, oh, are we going to get other like MCU cameos throughout here? And there sort of are. I mean, they show the whole
the Hulk was there,
Avengers lineup and the Hulk. But I think, at least personally, I forgot for a bit that. Oh, this is really like a Fox tie-off. Yeah, which means like, okay, if we're going to tie up Fox things, we're going to tie up the Fantastic Four. They even showed clips from the newest one at the end of the movie. Mm-hmm. But I think Human Torch is a great way to do it because it's like you had this double casting between the Human Torch and Captain America.
Yeah, so that was just another way for the humor to like kind of poke through. More or less what ends up happening is that they get captured because Toad is a giant magnet and Wolverine is very much magnetic. So that was like the thing.
Yep.
Basically captures Deadpool and Wolverine, and it's like a weird like Mad Max style scene where there's like a convoy.
Very much Mad Max. Yes.
Yep. So Johnny, who's the Human Torch, Johnny Storm, right?
Yep.
So Johnny Storm, Wolverine, and Deadpool are basically taken to Cassandra Nova's hideout, which in the trailer was the giant Ant-Man corpse, which is just a really cool set design. It's just another kind of reference. Again, it's like, I think it's supposed to like excite you that it's like, oh wow, like everything's like kind of coming together now, and it's a pretty cool experience.
They used it to set up the whole Paul Rudd never ages joke, which I thought was funny in the theater because I didn't even hear a snicker out of anyone when he actually said it, but it was one of the jokes they played in the trailer. So
yeah,
it's like,
that's
whatever.
right. Yeah. So Cassandra and Logan have more of a history just because of the Xavier tie. Logan, Charles Xavier dies in that movie. So it kind of makes sense that, that Logan's a little bit more sympathetic towards her. And there's kind of some seeds planted in here. Yeah. But they're all standing there. And then this is kind of like, I don't really know if I like Marvel movies tend to do this. Because it's now the second one in recent memory where I can think they bring in a cameo, everyone's really excited to see it, and then the villain kills them mercilessly. Because in the secret episode in the Multiverse of Madness, Scarlet Witch does the exact same thing to the other Avengers, where Reed Richards gets turned into spaghetti, and a Black Bolt, explodes, the Rainbow Captain Marvel. Yep. So
yeah, you're right. It's exactly like that.
So it's just I mean that was another thing where like I kind of knew, and again they made a joke about it because Cassandra Nova basically Deadpool does Deadpool things and he rattles off says like, dude, this guy was like totally like smack talking you. He was saying a bunch of really messed up like, and she's like, oh, really? Where are you now? And then she, I think, just touched, and then he, she took his skin off.
She just did this little, gesture.
Gestured, and then scooped all his skin coming off, and then he falls into, a flesh pile of, bones on the floor. And that's supposed to basically establish, hey, Cassandra Nova's, a very powerful being that is probably above Deadpool and Wolverine, and that you're, very much... I think the idea is to, make you feel worried about their, safety, because then obviously they're not wanting to agree with, but be in the same room with someone who's so bad like that. They're gonna attack her, and because they find out that she has the ability to take them home, presumably. But basically she's like, nope, one of my goals here is that I have to feed the Void Monster from Loki once again, and that's going to be you now. And so she kind of shoves him back far away. But they find a way basically to escape.
Just escape amidst the chaos.
Yeah. And they also showcase at this point Nova's ability to reach into your mind and look at your memories. Also to manipulate those memories as well.
I think that was the new thing. We've seen so many people mind read and go into your memories before, but I don't think I've seen memory manipulation like that, where Cassandra changed what Vanessa said to Deadpool.
Yeah. So that was the inciting incident that basically made Wade, basically was making Wade question if he was needed in the world, and that was the same thing that Happy said to him. It was you shouldn't need to matter, you just people matter to you, and you just kind of fall into it almost. Which is kind of funny to think about. But they attack basically and get mad. Wolverine stabs her in a really kind of mood as this is happening, but eventually she has some sort of psychic powers as well, or she has some sort of healing factor, and then gets pushed away to the Alioth or whatever, however you pronounce it.
Eliath, I think. Yeah,
Eliath. That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. I was trying to remember it in my head for a bit, and I couldn't until just now.
Yeah. So then after that, basically, they were escaping. They go to Nice Pool.
Yes. That's kind of their first encounter. Once they left the hideout, whatever they left the Ant-Man corpse.
They were going to the Borderlands in order to find like this group that Johnny Storm told them about. It's basically you're either working with Cassandra Nova or you're dead. Yeah. But there are these people, by the way, that exist. So basically that's like the only lead they have is that they're going to find the people because, again, at this point, both Deadpool and Wolverine think that they can go to the TVA and then they'll be able to fix their world. So they're just looking for a way back home.
They're very much motivated to get out.
Yeah.
If they can.
Cassandra may be the only one, in which case they're going to have to find people that are able to do that.
Yep.
Nice Pool gives them a car. This is where Dogpool comes in a really kind of funny entrance. Dogpool doesn't do a whole lot other than is just a funny prop.
Yep.
Which is fair. I mean, it's whatever. Not everything is to matter. No. Nice Pool is this version of Deadpool that doesn't get his hands dirty. Also, I guess doesn't have
the healing factor.
His face is like basically really normal.
Yep.
So like it's a normal Ryan Reynolds face. Mm-hmm. But yes, Deadpool is jealous of him for his guns and the dog.
Yes.
But
he had the same kind of carelessness toward him that he had toward Johnny Storm.
Right.
Which is very characteristic of Deadpool, at least what we've seen like cinematically, which is like, I think it's almost like he decides early on, like, I'm going to get this guy killed.
Yeah.
and he goes through with it, for sure.
Yep. And that's pretty much more or less, it's kind of just setting up the T for that.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to describe it.
Yep.
But eventually they basically borrow his car. Deadpool and Logan have another fight where basically Deadpool kind of slipped that, like, if the TVA is going to be able to help us, and Logan at this point is very mad and goes into like a Wolverine type rage where basically, like, what do you mean if?
Yep.
Like, you told me this was going to happen. I mean, it was like, part of me felt it was a little bit forced, but it's also a fun scene. They have to fight each other. I mean, that's Deadpool and Wolverine. Like, they both have healing factor. It just has to happen.
Yeah.
But he basically gets chastised. Logan really he joins the dog on Deadpool train where he basically is like, wow, like, you can't even get, like, your girlfriend to, like, accept you. Like, she's a stripper. Yes. Like, you're a really big piece of shit and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So, I know that there was another scene where they were just at a diner where they were just kind of talking a little bit more and the tension was building up and Logan is slowly revealing that something's up with his timeline, that he's not like any normal Wolverine. Yeah. But I don't think there's a whole lot. Eventually, Wade and Logan meet the Resistance. They're called the Others in the Borderlands, where we see quite a bit in terms of cameos. I guess they're not really cameos because they have a minor role in the movie.
At least one of them was. I want to talk through those because like one of them confused me a little bit. Mm-hmm. But the first one we get is Elektra, which didn't surprise me because we looked at the cast ahead of time.
Yep.
And Elektra is also from that early 2000s era of they did Daredevil, Elektra, Blade was kind of part of that series too.
Yep.
We got Blade as well, but I didn't think that was the original.
That was Wesley Snipes.
That was the original one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because I keep seeing the new casting for Blade.
Yes.
For some reason, I keep thinking that's the original guy.
Well, that's why they even made a joke about it. Because they said, like, he's like, you're Blade. And then he's like, yep, the one and only. And then I think Deadpool said, like, yeah, they're not going to be replacing you anytime soon or something like that.
He did nod to that. Because that show, I don't remember what it's going to be, is coming out next year already.
It should be, very, very close. But
So we get Blade. And then the next one wasn't from... They could have done, like... They mentioned Daredevil was there with them at some point. They could have done Ben Affleck's Daredevil. But they actually brought in what I totally, again, like the Human Torch being also Captain America, played by Chris Evans.
Yep.
What was for a long time a fan casting of Channing Tatum as Gambit.
Yeah.
Which I thought was cool, but I couldn't stand the character because they decided to make him have this French, almost like a Cajun accent.
I don't even know what accent
I think it was
that
supposed
is.
to be Cajun.
Okay. He's variant.
Yeah, true. It sounded like French and Jamaican sometimes, which I think kind of gets near Cajun. So.
It was a strange accent, but I think that was part of the charm.
The bit was that you couldn't understand him, and that's fine. The whole purpose was, hey, here's your fan casting.
Yep.
As this guy for a little bit. They didn't kill him off right away like they did, for Human Torch, but
yeah, which is that was kind of half refreshing because I was expecting. There's one more person in the others, which is X-23 or Laura.
Yeah, Laura.
I don't think it was the same one, obviously, but
no, it wasn't.
Kind of had a similar thing play out with them. If we're talking about core events or whatever, canon events, maybe that is probably just going to be one where. Wolverine sacrifices himself for X-23.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see that for sure, but basically they have they kind of mingle. It's pretty funny, everyone's kind of smiling at the theater. Mm-hmm. People like celebrity cameos in their Marvel movies.
Yep.
So they go and basically they decide, okay, yeah, we are going to go and we are going to confront Nova and we're going to try to get out of here, or at least finish our story. It's a suicide mission. And, because some people that live in the void, they're very much content and they're like, whatever, things are gonna happen.
And they can do what they wanted. They can be. I think Cassandra even said you can be who you are here.
Yeah. But. So basically that night, Logan's not having it because again he's kind of still not very self-confident. He's I doomed everything. I'm not going to, do this. Mm-hmm. This is a waste of time. There's no point. We should just not do this. And then Laura, or X-23, basically talks to him, and obviously that's a particularly, impactful thing, at least we presume.
That was one point I wanted to bring up, which is, I think, a common theme that I've seen with what... Actually, not even just within Marvel, but, I think back to Everything Everywhere All at Once with what cinema is doing with the whole multiverse construct, mm-hmm. which is that in that scene where Laura goes and kind of consults Logan, she tells him, I think she really gives him the push and the shift here in his decisions and in his character development, which is that, hey, my Logan is the whole reason that I got to continue living and other kids got to continue living.
Yep.
And it's so what I see, and I swear I even see it the faces of the actors, which is crazy, but they act like they recognize each other, which is a totally real and valid response. You see this person that looks identical, you consciously know that they're a variant from another universe, but you still fall subject to that sense of familiarity, and it causes a whole bunch of character shifts and development.
Yeah.
And I totally saw that, so I wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Laura.
Yeah. This is basically where Logan goes in and basically says, I'm not your Wolverine, because he didn't do that. Mm-hmm. He, left everyone and kind of ran away. He just kept walking, is what he was saying. Mm-hmm. It's revealed, in very obvious, clear terms, but this is kind of what he hinted at, I'm not the person that you need for this. Mm-hmm. So basically they're all, so they said at sunrise that they were going to go out. Logan basically is kind of implied that I'm just going to sit here and drink or do some thinking, whatever. You see them next, they're in their Honda Odyssey and they're driving to the Ant-Man head. They're basically going back to face Cassandra Nova, which a lot of people would say is a suicide mission, so it almost gives them kind of brownie points. They go through, the blade is a rocket launcher somehow. I don't actually know if that's a reference or not, but
I don't know.
I think that maybe it's just a funny gag that he just somehow ends up with a bazooka.
Yeah.
But they blow a hole open and they They basically they do like their super cool entrance, and then you see Logan come out of the trunk, and that he was, going to pursue the other actors that aren't named Deadpool or Wolverine. Basically said, like, we kind of know this might be the end of the road.
Yeah.
We're going to hold him off while you go up and, fulfill your purpose or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Because their universe, I think it's implied that it's all, like, gone. Like, they're pruned more or less.
Yep.
So, the plan is that in order to get Cassandra Nova to not instantly rip their skin off, that they need to block her head with Juggernaut's helmet, because they talked about using Magneto's helmet, but Magneto's not in the movie. They just said, like, off screen, like, oh, she already took care of Magneto and his helmet, because she knew that was her main weakness, was the debilitating helmet. And then they said, but Juggernaut's helmet was there, and he was clearly there in the movie. He looks a little bit smaller than he did in Deadpool 2, but,
He was the early 2000s Fox version.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I guess I didn't make that connection.
Oh, yeah, he was. I think the one connection that there kind of was from Deadpool 2's version of Juggernaut is in Deadpool 2 they mentioned that I think Juggernaut is also like a sibling of Charles Xavier.
I think so, yeah.
And they talked about like his helmet was constructed to work against like the telekinesis and whatnot. Or
I don't know what it is.
Mind powers. There's another word.
His brain needed support.
Yeah. So that was just a thought I had to kind of back up, like, oh, they didn't just make up in this movie that,
it was like a well-established thing, at least if you were keeping score, but it also just makes sense, like, big metal helmet is going to put a damper on your bald head. Yeah. So, more or less, a cool fight sequence where they're kind of... there's a bunch of old like enemies. You had like Deviant, Nightcrawler was there.
That was actually Azazel.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
From the Days of Future Past. No, sorry. X-Men First Class.
Well,
2011.
You got me. I got caught. All right. I was just gonna say it was Red Nightcrawler.
Nope.
But
basically, Azazel is Red Nightcrawler. But yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go. I did win in the end. So, fight scene is pretty good. Fight scenes in general, they're pretty good.
Yeah.
I think some of them go on the longer side, but I think this one was pretty good.
Honestly, the only fight scene I didn't like was the opening fight scene. Just like
really?
Deadpool just absolutely obliterating the TVA officers and I see why they had to do it. I felt like a few things. Like they were trying to get rid of I think that was the most gore and violence they showed, other than like
more or less
losing his skin.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking during that whole fight scene between the others and then Cassandra's whole team, it was totally a PG-13 fight.
Yeah.
They did the whole rated R fight right at the beginning, kind of got it out of their head.
Yeah.
Kind of wanted you to forget about, like, they wanted to get it in there, make you forget about it for the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
I also thought just something was off about the CG with Logan's skeleton.
Yeah.
And I know it's because they were kind of imprinting the credits on top of the bones and stuff. Like, the whole purpose of that was like, yes, things are very like kind of digital and computer generated in this because we're overlaying like credits onto things that aren't even real and whatever.
Yeah.
But it was just like, I'm like, this looks like this is a very badly like rendered metal texture that just wasn't convincing to me.
Yeah. I mean, in general, I think the CGI was pretty good.
It was mostly good. The only other bad part for me was Headpool.
Yeah.
It looked like a cartoon.
I almost think that was intentional.
It might have been.
Yeah.
It definitely, I'm sure it matched the comic style to a T. But
yeah.
It's like when everything else is live action, it's like kind of hard to...
That is true. Yeah. CGI on the dog sometimes was a little like, its eyes were extra big.
When it had the goggles later, the eyes were wrong.
Yeah, it was really weird. But I guess you're going to have blips from time to time in CG. Yeah. But you're totally right about PG-13 like kind of fight sequence. It's almost like they knew that it was going to happen.
Yeah.
And they just didn't know how much they were going to get away with in other parts of the movie.
Yeah.
So, because I think, this is a lot of it anyway is fan service. I mean, you got Gambit. He's got the cards that explode, and it's pretty gory. But
actually, Gambit's part was not PG.
Yeah, Elektra doing Elektra, and like Blade like stats you with a machete. But you're right, it is kind of almost to a comical effect.
Yeah,
maybe that's just the direction they were going. But it's. Maybe it's something with like the actors too, like their likenesses, or they don't want to like have things like that happen. But I agree, that definitely is kind of a weirder one. But eventually Wade and Logan go up, and basically Nova once again is kind of getting the upper hand. Like, they don't really have a plan. Now she starts peering into Logan's mind. And now he's the one that this is where you can like finally see like his whole trauma, and it's almost like that Cassandra's helping him because she makes all the like voices in his head like go away, provides like comfort, and is almost like coaxing him to like become one of her henchmen, more or less. I think that's kind of her goal. But eventually you see Laura in the midst of the fighting kills Juggernaut. And then in a pretty gruesome way with the classic like Wolverine slide that was already in the previous movie, so it was a nice touch. But then throws up the helmet, and then as it seems like something was going to happen, that like Logan was going to succumb and was like, oh yeah, I'm totally going to be on your side, he's like, no, you. And then Deadpool puts on the Juggernaut helmet. And basically that just means that she's just helpless, like a normal person now. So that happens, and then they're like, all right, well, now take us back. And then they kind of, I guess, didn't think it through that, like, in order for her to bring them back, that she has to have her powers. So it's like this weird trust thing.
Although she didn't really need her powers, it turns out. They thought they needed her powers, because remember
that is
the
true.
whole thing that actually got them back that's
actually really funny.
Slide ring.
I didn't even catch that she was bluffing that whole time.
She was bluffing.
That is interesting. Earlier on in the movie, kind of again we're skipping a little bit, but Paradox is planning to betray Cassandra Nova, and he has someone on the inside who is Pyro. Basically he wants to be able to like prune mercilessly. And I'm not exactly sure what the motivation was behind Paradox double-crossing Cassandra Nova.
I can't remember either. I know they kind of felt like they had a deal because they knew they needed to send her to the Void because she was so dangerous, but it turns out she actually liked being there, so it worked at some point. I can't recall either what.
Well, regardless, Paradox doesn't want Cassandra Nova around, and sends Pyro as a sleeper agent to basically kill her when the time is right. She's seen as a wild card. Like, I think that he just doesn't trust her to like play nicely, because she wanted to destroy the TVA, I think, at one point. I guess maybe that's what it is. So he like wants to tie the loose ends, because Paradox is kind of running a rogue unit of it, like a rogue sector. So he's just kind of doing things as he wants. So maybe this agreement just kind of isn't known by anybody, and he just doesn't want anyone to find out. I guess I can see like some rationale there. At least it's better than why Deadpool would want to leave his world behind and go to the world Earth 616. But regardless, eventually he shoots her, and then Logan, being the great guy he is, maybe in a bit of character development, dare I say, he's like, no, like, we can't let her die like this. You're Charles Xavier's sister. Like, we need to make sure that you're healed and not just gonna die because Pyro shot you. So, I mean, I guess that makes sense.
Well, he was trying to remember his lessons from Charles, and he said, like, if Charles were alive, he would, cross universes to like save you or to come get you or whatever. So that's more or less where that goes. Obviously there's a lot of tension here between like what could happen, but Logan tells Deadpool to take off the helmet. He does so, and then she is kind of like, haha, that was fun. So Nova is able to heal, and then by sparing her or saving her, Nova basically is using a sling ring from some Doctor Strange variant. It's kind of funny that
that is the way that people travel through the multiverse, is just sling ring. And
well, my problem with that is I always thought like sling rings were just for space. I didn't know they had a time element, because the void exists at the end of time. So when they're showing stuff like Pyro calling Paradox and then the sling ring taking people from the void to current time, like they've never showed the sling rings used for time jumping before, so.
But I mean, it's like, it's magic. It's like whatever. I mean, I guess it's like that's just something that sling rings could do, and you know, Cassandra Nova's smart, would be able to know how to use a sling ring. So it's like, okay. So they go back to Wade's timeline on Earth 10,005 at 10,005, whatever. 10,005. They basically find out that Paradox is using the Time Ripper device. He's going to mercy kill the timelines. He's not going to let them fizzle out slowly over thousands of years. Instead, he's going to do that because, again, he sees conflict with how the upper heads of the TVA are, again, like letting things just die out normally. Nova says, "Oh, you're going to do this? Haha. I'm going to go now." And do that. Yep. So it's kind of like she was good for like a second and then went back to being kind of the antagonist. The Deadpool Corps is there to stand in the way between Deadpool and Wolverine to stop the nefarious plot of, basically it's Deadpool's homeworld at this point, that is going to be time ripped ahead. So she's basically saying, like, I'm going to destroy all the timelines because she was betrayed by Paradox. I guess it's like tit for tat, you know, like he betrayed her, so he's going to betray her, or she's going to betray him. So at this point, as Cassandra Nova can take control, Paradox fills in. Well, no, there's a fight scene, right? Obviously.
Yep.
So we can probably go over that one real quick. There's a lot of cameos in this one. Well, there's one cameo.
I guess, well, in terms of cameos, wait, who are you thinking?
Well, Lady Deadpool.
Is it supposed to be, I can't think of her name.
Lady Deadpool is Blake Lively.
Is it Blake Lively?
Blake Lively, who is Ryan Reynolds' wife.
Right. Okay.
So that is the one that is Lady Deadpool. And there was a huge, if we're talking about hype, there's a big thing about like who is Lady Deadpool, because she was in like the very last trailer.
Yes.
And so a lot of people had a bunch of big names. They showed But
I remember it was funny. Some people thought they were like, it'd be funny if Lady Deadpool is still just played by Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, I think that. So there's a lot of speculation there, but they had. I mean, Nice Pool came and he's like, "Yeah, sorry, we're gonna have to stop you." Headpool is there. The Kid Pool. Yep. All sorts of just Deadpool variants. Yep. There are a lot of just kind of unnamed ones. It's like a Japanese samurai Deadpool.
It's a Western cowboy.
A Western cowboy.
Pretty not much different from what we saw with all the Spider-Man variants. Across the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah. So it's just kind of an interesting thing. It's kind of another like sort of spectacle thing, which I will say that I think that that's probably one of the things that actually hurt the movie a little bit, was that there was a lot of focus on the character vibes, I guess, between Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds is really good because, you know, I think they've always wanted to be on screen together. They've always wanted to be, Hugh Jackman is like the Wolverine guy, Ryan Reynolds is the Deadpool guy. It makes a lot of sense. They're friends in real life. They're very passionate about the characters that they play. Like, that's cool. And they have these, like, moments where they fight each other. And we kind of glossed over them a little bit. There's a couple of times where they fight or they just generally bicker, you know, at each other. This is supposed to be the big moment where they, like, team up to fight something else. Because they're not really featured in the big fight at the Ant-Man land. That's mainly goes to the others. But this for them is basically, like, the cool part. And I feel like when making movies is hard, let me just preface that. So I don't know if there's any way that you can like get around this or whatever, but to me it feels like there's a lot of these cool character moments and then the plot moving forward is kind of like an afterthought. Because, like, one of the scenes is, like, Deadpool and Wolverine fight each other all night, whatever. It's, like, kind of this, like, oh, man, they love fighting each other, and it's, like, really funny. But then the actual plot moves forward. It's like, oh, Laura finds them and then drives their car to their hideout. Yep. So it's like, okay. They're like, oh, well, we're going to have all these Deadpool variants. Yeah. How are they going to be fighting all these Deadpool variants? Oh, well, the bad guy is going to recruit them, and they're going to have to fight all of them. Yeah. So like that's
we
like
have this thing, so we structure.
That's like the set piece, and then the thing that moves the plot forward. Sometimes it's for a joke, it's like funny. Other times it's kind of just like a little weak. Yeah, I think there's a bit of weakness. So Deadpool and Wolverine, there's a whole montage. There's a continuous shot.
This was where we also got the Wolverine mask on Hugh Jackman for the first time.
That is correct. So the entire Wolverine fit is now
I think it looked a little derpy in live action for some reason. Something with like the parts that go over the eyes.
I think that
on a side profile.
I think that at some point they put in CGI for it.
It does look a little CGI.
I think that I can't say it's for that, like the scene where he first does it especially. Like, obviously it's a part of his costume, but at a certain point, like later on, it feels like it's CG because it looks extra pointy, and his eyes look extra white or whatever. I think it's when they're underground in like the subway or whatever. Yeah. But I'd have to watch again, I guess, to see that. But, so this kind of seemed like the same thing. Like, they had a really neat idea that they would be able to pull off, but then, and it's funny. But Ted Pool, the like co-Deadpool, because again, as a part of Deadpool 2, he saves everyone in X-Force. Like he like saves Vanessa.
Oh, Peter.
He also Peter. Yeah. My bad, not Ted. Peter. He just sort of looks Peter like a Pool. Ted, I guess. Yeah. Peter Pool. That's right. So he goes and Peter Pool kind of comes in to save the day. And the way the fight is resolved after, obviously they do all this cool killing and action stuff, and then they have to remember they're all Deadpool, so they all have healing factors. They're all coming back. And then it kind of seems like you're almost written into a corner. It's like, well, okay, you have these unkillable things versus these unkillable things. No one's going to really win. It's just going to be like a time waster. Yeah. And they kind of just freeze for a second, and then like Ted comes up, was like, "What's up? I'm also Deadpool, and I'm like normal guy, but I'm in a Deadpool costume." Yeah. And then all the Deadpools, like how Deadpool is freaking out over Dogpool, maybe that's the correlation. Yeah. They freaked out over Peter Pool, and that's the way the conflict has been resolved. Yep. So. In some ways, it's like you just look at it at face value. It's like movie junk food. It's an MCU movie, like whatever, right?
Like, it's just to show the Deadpool variants.
Yeah, and yes, it's like, is that like a relevant part? Are there really stakes? And you didn't think there were stakes in that fight, like at all.
It was to hold them off from getting down to the TVA to shut down the.
So
Time Ripper.
That was like really, I guess I kind of looked at that scene. I felt like after that, I was like, all right, like okay. Because even like still like something that oddly it was a fourth wall break that resonated with me, but they went down to the subway where more or less they break through and Nova is taking control of the Time Ripper to destroy all the timelines, and Paradox is telling him all through things, and he's like, don't worry guys, it's the home stretch. Because at that point I was like well, yeah, I mean, like, it kind of feels like it's going to be near the end of the movie, and I just saw that, and it didn't feel too climactic, so hopefully, like, whatever this was here. So, I mean, I think that was definitely a slower part, or if you want to call it a low, it's like a lower part of the movie. Yeah. I can see how a lot of people would be really excited to, like, be laughing at all the silly things happening on the screen, and how it resolved was extra silly, so they kind of, like, topped it off like that. Maybe just didn't resonate with me personally.
It didn't for me. I mean, actually, that was, now that I'm remembering it more, it's like really the most gory part, and it's like, okay, let's just have Deadpool and Wolverine rip through these Deadpool variants.
Yeah, like their arms getting chopped off
for the sake of it.
Yep.
And just painting the inside of this bus with blood.
Yeah, I think that there's some things with these sort of like gorier rated R movies that kind of don't care where it's like artsy. Because I recently saw a movie called Argyle. Argyle's a name, and they kind of had a similar vibe because it was from the same people that made Kingsman. Yeah, and Kingsman had a vibe where it was like they're killing people, but it almost looks like pretty, right?
Yeah, because I remember they like sliced people in half, and at the end, like people's heads blow up, but they just poof 'em.
It was like poofing, yeah. Gory. So I think there's just kind of like that. Yeah. It's an interesting thing to talk about, like in rated R movies, like this sort of like they're using the gory to be art. Like I guess it's like for a reason. Like a lot of people don't like gore for no reason. Like it's kind of like easy pickings, like any slasher any slasher movie is kind of seen as like low-hanging fruit, where it's just like, oh, you just got to show people dying in creative ways, and like that's the movie.
I was like, one thing I wanted to mention was I didn't like how maybe numb I am to like seeing that much gore.
Yeah,
and because it is like, I don't know, maybe I felt like a little bit for Deadpool it was a bit overused, like with that intro scene and with the Deadpool core team scene. And I also didn't like how much I knew like all the references and dirty jokes. I was like, damn, why do I know so many of these?
Yeah.
But, I was like, geez, am I that just like kind of... And I feel like that's something that, is, there's the whole like video games make people violent argument. But I think there's probably a bit of an argument for like seeing gore in film and stuff. You have superhero stuff like The Boys. I haven't seen it because I know it's so gory.
Yeah.
Even animated stuff like Invincible is really gory like that too. And I'm just like, I'm not for it.
Yeah. I mean, I think some people like would... I think that it just kind of comes with the territory a lot of the time. You're a rated R movie. Why is it rated R? It's because the source material was like that. The way that it translates to this particular movie, it almost feels like, it's just the effect that you have, and you have to be really careful, I guess, as a director, as to like where you're showing the most stuff. Because when it was Johnny Storm, it was pretty shocking.
Yeah,
it was like, oh wow, they Doctor Stranged him, where they totally kill him in order to buff the villain. Still a little weird about that, but sometimes you just do it for the sake of entertainment. Yeah. And people just like seeing violence that's over the top, but it's over the top, and that's what makes it entertaining, because you know that there's no realistic way that would ever actually happen to somebody.
It shocks you. It's a shock factor.
So sometimes it shocks you, and other times it is just kind of like,
They did that because they could.
Yep, because they could, exactly. Or it's the spectacle of it, or it's like they're going to make it look cool, and that's like when the bus where they're doing the shooting, it's like all the windows are turning red, you can still see their shadows, so it looks cool, and that's like a way to depict violence in a way that's visually interesting.
I'll give some credit to that, because that could have been like the van scene where with Deadpool and Wolverine fighting all night was kind of creative too. It was weird because even when I saw that in the trailer, I'm like, oh, this is going to be so constricting, but it wasn't the first time they did it, because the first Deadpool had all of that very close in the car.
They had the in the car fight.
That was done really well, but I was like, I don't know, is this going to feel repetitive and just really too tight? I think that's the impressive thing about it, is you just you choreographed this whole fight scene within this confined space.
It takes a lot of planning and cinematography, and you can really kind of appreciate that. So I think audiences will do. Like they will see like, oh, it's just going along a trolley, and they have to, it's like all on one take, and they like go forward and they go back and then they go forward. So I think that it is interesting. I just kind of drew that conclusion, that like the thing that actually moved the plot forward is kind of something that is comedic, which fits the brand.
It totally does. And that's one thing that Deadpool has as an advantage, is like, if there's something weak, or maybe it's a stupid decision,
they can move to it quickly.
Yep. But like the whole beginning is like, Deadpool, it was incredibly stupid to think you could just grab another Wolverine and place it in your universe. Like, yes, it's stupid. We would probably berate any other character for doing that, but like, it's Deadpool, and we expect stupid sometimes.
It's Deadpool, and it's like a very Deadpool solution. Yeah, it's like, and it also gives you opportunity for fun cameos and references and stuff like that. Yes. So again, I'm not gonna dog on it, but it was just. To me, that was just when I noticed like a little bit of a lull. Maybe it was just that it wasn't as impressive as the rest of it, but it was still good. Still good.
So we get past the Deadpool core.
That is correct. So Paradox fills Wade and Logan in. They're like, how can we stop it? So like, well, you can't stop it unless, and then he tells you like how to stop it, which is basically that this machine works by having matter and antimatter go together, and then it basically fizzles the timeline away, whatever, like science fiction mumbo jumbo junk, right? But basically, if they could somehow connect them in a way that it wasn't originally intended, and he says using their bodies, that you would basically destroy the Time Ripper and you create like this feedback loop or whatever. Bad news is though that whoever's down there is also going to like die. And at this point, we already kind of mentioned it before that they both kind of had like arcs that involve like selflessness, I guess.
Yeah, so kind of self-sacrifice to give them a feeling of redemption.
Yeah, so Wolverine let people down, like actually, like he messed up. Deadpool definitely is just not feeling as fulfilled, or he's just not ready yet.
He wanted the higher purpose.
He wanted the higher purpose just in general. Yeah. So they're both good candidates. They're both like, all right, when we go down, it's going to be me. And I think
they both can't die any other way, really.
You're right. Yeah, exactly. That's true. So it's kind of like another, almost like Logan moment where it's like, oh, well, one of them's going to do it. Yeah. Wolverine goes in first, and then Deadpool smacks him, and he says, nah, this is me now. Yep. This is my... He's done this before. Like in Deadpool 2, that was like the whole thing. He had the inhibiting collar, and then his healing factor went away. And he took a bullet for the kid, and then it changed the kid's future because someone was wanting to die for him or whatever. And then, that was a funny scene anyway. I just had to remember that one. But no, Deadpool basically is trying to do it. He can't reach because it's too far away. Yep. And you see, like, everyone, the tension's building. This is the climactic moment, but then suddenly...
Cassandra Nova's also at the top of the machine.
Yeah.
Hooked up to it, about to do whatever she's going to do.
Yeah, but everything's turning to spaghetti. Yeah. You see the timeline integrity bar is kind of funny. It goes really, really low. And then they're like, oh my gosh, he's not going to make it. And then... You already know, even if you didn't see the movie, you already know what happened. Yeah. Wolverine busts through, he goes, and he joins the sacrifice kind of bandwagon. Yeah. and then you see timeline integrity back up to 100%, and then it seems like everyone is shaking very violently, fizzling, like, I'm dying, definitely. Mm-hmm. And then we were there at the, oh my gosh, that just happened, and like, what's going to happen next? Until, I think at this point, Hunter B-15, I just remember the name, that's the TVA, like, administrator. Comes and is like, I noticed an unsanctioned Time Ripper, and you kind of expected, like, this is how it's going to end. It's like, oh, well, now Paradox is going to get his fit too, and then that, but then, more or less, Deadpool and Wolverine like barge in. Like he was basically making himself out as like the friend of Deadpool and Wolverine. He was like, I told him that it was going to sacrifice them, and this lady was hijacking the whole thing, and like he was basically like did a pretty good job of like bluffing his way out of it. But then Wade and Logan were like, nope, because the sacrifice would only happen if it was one person that was getting both the... I think this is the excuse. Yeah. If one person had the matter and antimatter coursing through them, then it was going to kill them. But because there were two of them...
Well, and the thing that I struggle with, it's like, okay, it's the same, almost the same principle as Guardians of the Galaxy 1.
Yeah.
Where...
I guess that's true.
Guardians of the Galaxy survived the power of the Power Stone because they were all absorbing the power together.
Yep.
You could also make the argument that it's like, okay, here are two self-regenerating.
Yep. Yeah,
that's the power they have in common. So, I mean,
it makes sense.
If you go with the physics standpoint, and even Paradox said it, it's like it's not like it's just physics, and it is real physics too, which is that like matter and antimatter just annihilate each other.
Yeah.
So shorting that circuit, which is what Deadpool and Wolverine did, should have just annihilated them atom by atom.
Yeah, that's what he said. Atomized specifically.
Which there's really no way to heal from. but they were fine somehow.
Yeah.
I don't love that. I mean, I was like, maybe if I thought about it more, it would, in the sense that like, would it have made sense for them to both die?
Mm-hmm.
I think yes, if they were just trying to wrap up Deadpool and Fox and be
done.
Yeah. But because they're like, okay, we're wrapping up Fox, but we want Deadpool and Wolverine. And we're doing the whole X-Men saga now. And
Bob
Disney
Iger called.
It, so,
Bob Iger called. We need more sequels.
Yeah. And making Hugh Jackman do this until he's 90.
I mean, that was funny. Even afterwards, they're kind of sitting on the bench where they're talking about like, so yeah, we did it, and we're like a team. And then they're like, you got to do this again. And then they reference Disney again. They basically said like, well, Disney's going to make you do this until you're 90 or something like that. It was funny. But the others return to their respective timelines because Wade had it. Logan was still wanting to fix his, previous timeline, but B-15 basically tells him that because he experienced what he experienced, that's what made him able to save Deadpool's timeline, and so that's why there was no reason to further change what happened. And I guess they're both kind of like, yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah. And so Logan at one point was just going to walk away and then be like, walk into the sunset. But then they established then that Wade takes Logan, and Laura is also there. Didn't exactly follow that. I guess maybe the Laura, I don't know if it was ever, well, no, it was established that the Laura from the others is a different Laura from the thing.
It's weird because that almost means there's two Lauras in that universe now, right?
Yeah, it's a little strange, but basically Logan and Laura meet Deadpool's friends, and they're back at his apartment, and I think like the last thing that pretty much happens is that Logan is encouraging Deadpool to reconcile with Vanessa, who they were kind of in a rocky spot, before that, with how when Deadpool was dying in the last movie, that he had like no real purpose, and that he needed to find, like, he needed to matter to people. And then movie over. Post credits.
No, before post credits. They did a really cool, the way they started the end credits, which, I mean, like, I can think of other examples, again, Guardians of the Galaxy, where it's not new for movies to have, like, the credits panning down the center, and you have some, like, pictures or bloopers or whatever running on the sides. But it was interesting how Deadpool did it, because they just kind of, it was almost very simple, but it was, like, credits down one side, and then all the footage and just like behind the scenes recordings from mainly Wolverine doing his recordings for the 2000 release of X-Men. But then you got everything from like clips from Elektra, and they did show Ben Affleck's Daredevil. Which was cool because Jon Favreau, who plays Happy Hogan, was Foggy Nelson.
It was a deep
and but then they also show they showed the Human Torch from the 2019 version of Fantastic Four, which was awful. Play the clip of like the new Richards saying, say that again. Like fantastic, trying to set up the Fantastic Four name. So cringy. But then post credit scene, we find out that
this is really funny. All right, so the post-credit scene, as it goes back to the Void, where Deadpool was saying all of the things that Johnny Storm supposedly was talking about Cassandra Nova. And it's like some weird out-of-pocket stuff. Like, it was like a very creative insult. And you're supposed to... And Johnny Storm is reacting in such a way to where it's like, what? I didn't say that. And it's supposed to look like the Deadpool got him killed. And like that's like a bit of a running joke. Because he basically was like filling the... he was basically... escalating things where he didn't really need to,
which he always
does, and he's just kind of a funny guy. But it cuts back to them in their ride as they're going to the Ant-Man Palace, or whatever you want to call it, where it's so funny. So it's just the fact that it's Chris Evans, right? Deadpool is learning more about Cassandra Nova on the ride over. And so Johnny Storm has a lot of things to say about Cassandra Nova, which to the point where it's just Chris Evans saying a bunch of really obscene about
the exact things that Deadpool
it's literally the exact things. Yes. So at first Deadpool says like, oh yeah, word for word, like, and again it's reacting to the point where you think that he's lying, but just the fact that one, Johnny Storm actually said those things, and two, Johnny Storm is being played as Chris Evans in this movie, makes it really funny. And I think it stuck with a lot of people. I think the Marvel post-credit scenes, to me, a lot of times it just feels like some of them have been misses recently.
Well, because they're always... Yeah, I agree, because they're usually setting up the next thing.
Sometimes.
And we're in such a weird stage right now where it's like, we don't even really know what the next thing is. Like, you used Blade's voice at the end of Eternals, and now we're not even getting another Eternals. Like, so what is that about?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think at this point now you just kind of have to expect that Marvel post-credit scenes are just going to be like callback jokes.
Yeah.
Multiverse of Madness, it was the guy in the hot dog stand or whatever.
Yes.
I can't even remember what it was for the Marvels.
For the Marvels, it was setting up the X-Men because Spectrum, Monica Rambeau, she ends up getting caught on the other side of that like space-time rift. Yeah. And she gets found by who she thinks is her mom.
Oh, that's
but it's
right.
Actually
it's Beast.
It's Beast, and the other kind of variant of, so Captain Marvel also has like this version of herself called Binary, where she's like,
oh yeah, that's right,
star sort of kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like seeing the what's the mom's, Maria Rambeau, seeing her as Captain Marvel again, like we saw that
that's right,
Doctor Strange, but this time as like, so not only is she a Captain Marvel variant, but she's like a Captain Marvel variant of Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
So that was cool. I recognized that immediately because her costume just shows like, instead of just like the one main star in the center, it kind of has the two like offset stars.
Yep.
So,
yeah. So, in terms of post credits, pretty funny. Make sure you stick around, I guess, or fast forward.
Or you can watch the Fox tribute. Yeah. Go use the bathroom and then.
Yeah, that's also good, right? Yeah. There's a bit of a gap. Yep. I was kind of it was strange because it was like a strangely like happy, warm tone that they were kind of really, and that's what I was referring to earlier. Like during the credits scene, I was like, man, this has been going on for a long time, and it feels like it's gonna be over.
Yeah.
And it was just a bizarre feeling that, like all the talented people that made those, apparently 4 good movies and 3 decent ones, and the rest are all trash.
Yeah.
And that'll be up to you to decide what they are.
Yeah. They really validated, like, yes, this is the end of Fox's contribution to Marvel, because we kind of knew it was happening. Like, the last thing they made, I think, was the 2019 X-Men movie.
Unless you're counting Deadpool, anything.
Oh, true.
But
well, 2019, last Deadpool was 2018, so yeah.
Yeah, it was the New Mutants
and X-Men.
I think it was...
and New Mutants would have been the newest one.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Dark Phoenix, right?
Dark Phoenix is what I was thinking.
Dark Phoenix is the one you were thinking of. Yeah. So, I'd say once you've made it through the pulp section, I'd say it's a pretty solid movie all around.
Yeah.
I'm still probably going to stand by the 8 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
I'm going to stick with my original rating. I try not to change afterward.
It's fair.
I do think like maybe it's a little more fair to bring it down to like 8.5, but
I'll
keep it.
It's whatever.
Overall, good to see again, especially if like you've seen the Loki series.
That too.
You've seen, maybe you were a big fan of like the original X-Men movies and other Marvel movies they were trying to dish out in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
You're really going to understand and appreciate a lot of those references. Or, I mean, even though he's kind of gruesome, Deadpool's a fun superhero character to watch because there's just a lot of humor all the time. And I feel like that captures more of an audience than just like, oh, here's a noble superhero.
Absolutely. With the little Avengers lines or whatever. So, yeah, I get that.
I can do this all day.
I don't know. It's like, sometimes people are like, did I just blow that guy's head off? Or something like that. I don't know. Yeah. You can get a little James Gunny with like Guardians of the Galaxy type of like vibe. But it's a pretty similar vibe.
Yep.
So, so
cool.
That's it for season 2, episode 1, Deadpool Wolverine. Thanks for coming back with us in this one. We look forward to having you back next time. In the meantime, we have an X account, or an X page, whatever you want to call it, on Twitter, at JBO Podcast. We'll have a link down in the show notes. Let us know your thoughts on this episode. Leave recommendations for future reviews if there's anything that's coming out, or even any series, or we're really trying to sort of expand what we're doing just a little bit. So we're open to trying a lot of new ideas. We got some plans coming up. We
have plans for the rest of the year, but definitely open to kind of shift gears. And I know we wanted to branch out at least for one episode, so we'll see what we end up doing.
Absolutely. So thanks for listening, and stay juicy.